thing that I've found over the years is that the guitar is set up in a way that really exemplifies our musical system, and our musical system is based on triads. It's a triadic system which has been around for hundreds of years, and a lot of guys get caught in playing scales and get lost because the scale itself is like the alphabet. If you want to spell a word, you'd have to start at the top of the alphabet and go A, B, C, A, B, C, D, and it doesn't really work as well as if you can sound out the sounds you want in your words. So for instance, if you take like G7, G7 is, for a lot of people, G7, well, it's G, B, D, and F. But really what it is, it's two sounds. It's a G major, or we play the G major here, and it's a B diminished. And the B diminished is really important because that gives us the third and the seventh, these sounds that we want. In fact, a lot of guys will play just that as a chord. So in my book, what I did is I put together a triadic approach to looking at the neck, which actually works very well, not just for playing arpeggios, but also playing diatonically and playing chromatically to understand how it functions. Hence the title, Getting Your Improvising into Shape. And it's had a good reception so far because I don't think there's a book like it on the market. I never wanted to write a book, but because of my workshops, guys said, "Do you have a book?" And I finally came up with one. So basically what I did is I took the diatonic key of C major, just take the chord scale. And if you take a look at this chord scale, it's based on major sevenths, minor sevenths, and a dominant seventh, and a half diminished. If you take those triads apart, you come up with C major, and I'll do it here on these three strings, because what this basically does is it talks about how the neck is going to move upwards. If I take this triad, there's only two things I can do to it to change the very nature of it and stay in the key of C. I can either lower the root or I can raise the fifth. Because I'm out of space here on the guitar. Now remember, this shape is actually this D shape that we learned here. So if I raise the fifth, then I get A minor. And once I do that, now I've gone to the very next possible place by moving just one note, and two notes stay the same. Now I'm going to do the same thing with A minor. The A minor, I'm going to raise the fifth, and I'll have now F major. And if I raise the fifth of F major, then I have D minor. And if I raise the fifth of D minor, I've got B diminished. If I raise the fifth of B diminished, I have G major. If I raise the fifth again, I've got E minor, and I'm back to C. So basically I've played this scale without playing the scale itself. I've played the notes in there, and what you can do is, you can play the chords, but play the notes individually. And you start to see, oh, okay, I have these intervals here, which are very important, because the thing about triads is, in our sense of overview on the guitar, we have inversions that are just there by the nature of the instrument. So whenever I play an inversion like the C here or here, it gives a certain texture, a certain sound, which is great. And we don't have to think about what it is. We just can play because the shape itself is already there. So if I do the same thing again, and I move up, and I do that same movement again, I'm moving up the neck, and what you can see is there are no black holes anywhere on the neck. And that happens, the black holes, from playing in positions. Because guys get locked into playing, okay, play first position, third position, or whatever, fifth position. And it comes a point when you're playing, and suddenly you have this like, okay, where am I in the key? And it happens to everybody. It's not something that is that anybody's, that they can avoid. It happens on every level. But you can avoid it by seeing the shape itself, because once you see that if I play this F shape, moving up to G, there's two shapes in between. There's a D minor and a B diminished. So even though I don't play all the notes, it gives me a sense of orientation that I wouldn't have from playing. Because I find a lot of guitar players who play in positions. In fact, I talked about this with Pat Metheny once, and he said when you see a guy playing in positions, you know where his finger's going to land. It's just very obvious. But when you play sort of open, and this is the concept too that Jim Hall and John Abercrombie and Joe DiOrio talked about, playing on one or two strings. You're moving in a vertical fashion, and the horizontal part of the guitar goes with it. So it's almost like this whole thing moves up in shapes. And the more you realize how much they're connected to each other, it'll allow you to do things that you never thought possible. And it'll get you away from playing things and losing yourself in scalier kinds of things. It doesn't mean that you don't play diatonically or chromatically, because you do in some cases. In fact, I have a lot of examples that use those things. And one of the things that I wanted to really do in this book was I didn't want to say, okay, here's David Becker lick 5 and number 9. I sat down and said, okay, these are the shapes that I could use for a G7. Let me find a couple here, and I'm going to write them down. So I took the very first example for G7 is taking a B diminished here, going to a C, to a D minor. And if you listen to the sound of it, you have all the chord tones. But you also have extensions of those chord tones, which allow you to get other types of things. So it's kind of like if I'm going to spell a word and I want to get some other colors into that word, or I want to get some paint and paint a wall and add some different colors. I don't have to play just the root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. I can add some extensions to it. But if I know that they lie in these particular sounds, then it's easier for me to get those sounds. Now, here's an interesting one. Here's one that's not in the diatonic system, but it actually works well because it works chromatically. If I take that same motion that I just had and I move the 5th up here to A minor, and then I go to the F. But when I go to the F, I'm going to just raise the 5th up a half step, and I'm going to get this augmented chord. And this augmented chord is very interesting because if I raise the 5th again, I'm back to D minor, so I haven't really lost anything. It's an extra chord here. But what it does, it allows me to have this sound that works very well for G7 flat 5. And if I use this, get that sound, you can also see that if I took this and I lowered the root, because we're going to consider this to be F augmented, I have an A major now. An A major is really nice for a 7 flat 5 chord. So it actually allows you to use some sounds that you wouldn't think of. And here's a version of that. If I'm just going to disperse the triad here, there's a lot of open strings, which a lot of guys avoid, but I love using them. So I get that sound that I want to have. And it also works well for if I'm going to play a half diminished. Because a lot of people think of the half diminished, they go, okay, well, I got to play this particular scale and move it here and go here. But if you look at that sound, this is a sound that a lot of guys use in jazz, where they play like this kind of sound. And you get that as your resolution. So I'm going to use, just out of the chord shape, I'm going to play a line for a 2-5-1. So I'll do the same thing again.